You gonna sing along to this?
I love this song.
I know you do. Yeah, y'all might be in for a treat as Jake Roos breaks into his crooning here. It's good to have Jake Roos beside me. I'm Ronnie DeBulsey. This is the UGA Sports Live podcast with Jim Dunn, and you see him there. And of course, we have Dane Young controlling everything and keeping us in line, and actually giving good advice and a good commentary. And we are told to let Dane talk more. So
gladly.
He actually
so my mom keeps emailing, right?
Yeah. He actually knows what he's talking about. We have, but of course, everyone's here to hear what Coach Donnan has to say about the Tennessee game, what he has to say about the upcoming Alabama game. Huge game this weekend, one of the biggest. We thought the LSU game was big.
I mean, this is one of those you've had circled for a couple of years already.
When it came out, they said, "Hey, here's a schedule. You circled this one, and you expected it to be week 2, but now it's week 4." So Georgia's had it. Thank God it's week 4 for Georgia.
Yeah, no kidding.
So. I'm gonna go pass around the table real quick and let everybody talk a little bit about Tennessee and what they think is coming up with Alabama. But first and foremost, I want to give a big shout out to our friends at Athens Ford. They are actually sponsoring our watch along show, as well as the podcast, as well as our website. So if it weren't for them, we'd probably all be unemployed. But I do want to mention that they have a $500 discount for students and recent graduates that you may be able to get. Or if you are a veteran or active military, you can also get a $500 discount. And they have those Ford certified pre-owned vehicles. They're the number 1 seller in the state of Georgia for Ford certified pre-owned vehicles. And the reason I'm bringing them up to start the show is to let everybody know that if you are looking to purchase one of those, if you qualify, you can get 3 years of 1.49% APR financing. So 1.49% for qualified buyers for 3 years on any of their Ford certified pre-owned vehicles. Those are fantastic vehicles. I guarantee when you get into one, you will think it's a brand new car, brand new truck, and you won't be able to tell the difference. It will drive like one. The service on it is the same. Fantastic vehicle, and to be able to finance it at that deal for a pre-owned vehicle is just insane, and I'm glad they're doing it. So I want to bring it right off the bat because I think it's a big deal. And if you need any service, I will be out there getting something else done this coming Monday. So just telling you, that service area, fantastic. So hit up our friends at Athens Ford. Coach Donnan, let's go right to you. Give me your take, because we did this with the watch-alongs. We know all your thoughts, but anybody who may have missed the watch-along show, give us your thoughts on the Tennessee game and what must Georgia do heading into Alabama.
Well, it's good to be with you guys, and appreciate everybody tuning in. It's certainly always good to get a decisive win over one of your arch rivals, and without going through the whole thing. Everybody knows the adversity we had that caused our own demise there early. But I just thought that the way our team showed poise was an overwhelming thing of, there was really a good chance for us to have a little bit of a panic situation there. And most teams would say, hey, what's wrong with us today? And certainly we had every opportunity there, particularly with the sudden change plays they made there in the first half. But I just thought the poise we came out with in the second half on offense and defense was stellar, and played extremely well together. And when everybody was called on, i.e. like Jake didn't punt much, but when he had to have a big punt, he made it. When Pod needed to make a field goal, he made it. When we needed a kickoff return, we made it. So when people had their chance, they did the job. As far as this week, we're going to break it down every which way you can. But I think the real key for us is being able to stop the run, because if they're able to run the ball efficiently, the way they can throw the football with those receivers, it's going to be hard for us to stop them consistently, because they're one of the best teams ever at running the RPOs, where they'll fake the ball inside and then hit behind the linebacker. And if they're running the ball good enough where our linebackers have got to fill in there, it's going to be a hard stop for us. But it's going to be hard anyway, because I don't think I've ever seen a team except one that I coached at Oklahoma. We were 11 for 11 against Missouri one game, 11 touchdowns, 11 extra points. That's 77, and that's not interstate 77. That was 77-0. And last week you saw Alabama get 63 on Ole Miss in regulation with every possession except one turnover on the goal line and one punt. So it's going to be, and I give our defense a lot of credit, it's going to be a lot more challenging for Alabama, but we got to stop the run to win this football game. That's the number one issue for me.
See, my first thought is, passing attack, passing attack, passing attack. That's why we have the coach on there. I'm like, how do you defend Waddle and all those other guys? Dane, give me your take on what Georgia did right in this past game. I was there with you when we did the watch along, but some people may have missed it. And what does Georgia need to do facing Alabama? Just kind of your view from your analytical mind.
So far, the only team that stopped Georgia, offensively or defensively, is Georgia. And that's been the case against Arkansas the first half. That was the case against Tennessee the first half for the most part. Yeah, Garantano hit a couple passes, but they're in that situation because Georgia made some pretty crucial mistakes. Georgia's defense is playing at a legendary level 3 games into a season. That sample size is not very big, but you're averaging giving up 38 rushing yards per game right now. That was -1 against Tennessee because of some sacks that helped as well. Coach is right. If you can make Alabama more one-dimensional, especially because Alabama does not have a mobile quarterback right now, I think that you have a very good chance to find yourself in a fourth quarter with a chance to win. And with a team as talented as Alabama, just like Georgia, that's all you can really ask for.
Your thoughts, but we didn't hear from you. You were probably knee-deep in a whiskey bottle or something.
Right. Yeah, right. I had 4 hours of photo work to do after the game. No, I think that, you got to like what you've seen out of Georgia so far. Clearly, I mean, the response in the second half, you got to wonder, can they come out and get off to the start that they want to? Obviously you saw that against Auburn, but, 2 out of the 3, they haven't been able to make that happen. You can't afford to make the mistakes they made against Tennessee and Arkansas, against Alabama, and expect to win. It's pretty cut and dry, in my opinion. Even if you are a second half team, they're going to be able, with their ability. I mean, what we saw last week against Ole Miss, they're so quick strike. They can hit you from all over the field. I think Mac Jones is playing at a level that makes them as dangerous as they've ever been. And so, I think that going into this week, you've got reason to feel confident, but there's also, reason to be worried because it is Alabama. I mean, it is what it is. My concern looking at it from the Georgia side of things is, can that right side of the line be better? I felt like, it was a real struggle for Warren McClendon last week. I thought that he had some trouble dealing with the pass rush. Obviously, they had to switch things around, put Xavier Truss in. Jamari Sawyer comes in after the nick on him. But, I don't know. I think that's really got to be where it comes from, because as much as you want to stop Alabama and contain their running game, you have to be able to establish yours on the ground as well against them. And I think that Kirby Smart knows that as well as anybody.
Yeah, I mean, where'd he learn it from?
Right.
Saban's going to try to do the exact same things and going to try to come in and stop the run. That was going to be my concern, is like, you have that. Everyone's talking about the number 1 offense in the country in Alabama versus number 1 defense in the country, Georgia. And I'm like, okay, well, if those two fight to a standstill, okay, you have special teams. Georgia might have a leg up there. That's a good part of it. What about Georgia's offense versus that defense? That defense had just let Ole Miss go rain all over them. And so everyone thinks, oh, well, Georgia's got the advantage there. Georgia, go back to that Arkansas game. That's not exactly where you wanted to. You did great against Auburn, but then, you just kept shooting yourself in the foot. Stupid penalties against a Tennessee team. And Alabama ain't Tennessee, Jack. You eventually broke Tennessee's spirit with those back-to-back turnovers to start the second half. Everyone kind of felt like, okay, here's the game as it's going to be. Tennessee is not going to, Alabama's not going to lay down and die.
Right.
Even if you get up on them, as we've seen, you can get up on them.
You better put the stake through their heart.
They are the vampire. Yeah, this is Halloween, Jack. I mean, these guys, stake, cut off the head, burn the body, burn the building, nuke it from 30,000 feet like they did an Alien or something. They won't die. They are Jason. They're going to keep coming back. So I think you really need to put your foot on the gas and never, ever let up. I mean, that's been Georgia's bugaboo against Alabama. Kirby Smart was asked about that in the press conference. I think he got 2 different questions about what does it take to put them away. You have to play the 60 minutes. And, of course, we got a lot of coach speak. But I just think that is – you're going to need the difference. You can't have a bad half like you've had 2 out of 3 games.
Yep.
And you can't assume that even if you're up, that you've got this game in the bag. I just don't see it. Coach, how do you get that message across to your players?
Well,
Who should know that?
I think the thing that you always do with your team knows the history of the series. You know how close we were in both games, and you just point out some of the things you did. You know, you're playing a team that has a championship mentality, but they also didn't make the SEC championship game last year, and we did. So we've got one too. We know what it takes to win a lot of big games. So you just talk in terms of playing to your own standards and understanding some of the faux pas that we've made so far, whether it's George Pickens squirting a water bottle or those two guys running out there to celebrate. Those things are critical issues that you remind yourself of, that most games, situations like that can lead to really terrible disasters type endings when you make those kind of plays. But as far as immature decision making, but I think the good thing about us all week, we're going to be challenged offensively against our defense. I'm sure they'll do a lot more one-on-one and two-on-two stuff as far as drills, and because both the offenses and defenses are similar for Alabama and Georgia, and they'll do, everybody will point out, the assistant coaches, the different situations that we got to be ready for. For instance, in a game like this, third down is a key. I mean, you got to get off the field on defense. You got to maintain the ball on offense. Third down is going to be critical. Certainly turnovers, you talk about that. Everybody knows about that. And then hidden yardage in the kicking game. A concern of mine would be our punter is averaging over 50 yards a punt, but if you kick the ball 50 some yards against this team, you better get down there and cover, because they got the number one kick returner in the country. And a lot of times when you punt the ball a long way, that's when you get good punt returns. So we've been kind of spoiled by kicking the ball deep against Arkansas and pinning them back, and not punting much against Auburn or Tennessee. So our coverage is going to be indicative of a lot of things, how good we can do with our coverage, just like their coverage is going to have to be good if they kick it short to McIntosh, because he's been good. So, and you just don't take for granted you're going to make field goals and all that, and Alabama's going to miss them. Their kicker hasn't missed one this year, but he's only tried, I think, 2 or 3. So there's a lot of stuff to talk about morale-wise, the build-up, keeping your body healthy all week, getting plenty of sleep, hydrating. But Kirby will do that. I know yesterday, morale-wise, he had a home run, as far as I'm concerned. He brought the Cattlemen's Association of Georgia, came out there and cooked steaks for the team right there in the parking lot. And you don't think that made them feel pretty good to come out there and have those big old babies waiting for them after? And Kirby doesn't miss a trick there. I thought that was a good time to bring the cattle in and rally them up. And with that, they also had chicken wings, stuff like that on top of it for anybody that wanted to not eat the steak. But, we eat good, they eat good. There's no question about it. But I think anything you can do to create a morale situation. Hey, give the players another pair of tennis shoes for the trip, maybe a pair of Air Jordans, whatever it might be. Just keep their minds on thing about, hey, let's go with it, man. Let's give them something big, have a good trip. We're going to fly over there Friday night. They'll probably go to the movie. Might end up being the same movie that Alabama's at. Who knows? But they'll be on the same schedule, I guarantee you.
Sharks and Jets.
When we come out to warm up, it'll be the same time Alabama comes. I mean, we're on the same schedule as they are, but just 2 different teams. But and the last thing I would say is, it's hard to say. People say nowadays, hey, defense wins championships over the years and all that, and a good defense is going to beat a good offense. Who knows? It's just going to be the whole back and forth of a game of being able to, like I said, third down. And the other thing is first down. We've been very run heavy on first down this year. I think it was good in the game last week because we were trying to, get our feet under us after we had a couple bad situations there. We ended up punting, running 3 straight downs after, we'd have some turnovers. But here's the thing. If we can make some play action passes on first down and get some tempo, the whole thing about, if anybody watch Ole Miss game, Ole Miss ran an inordinate amount of plays when Alabama wasn't ready. There was no question about it. They couldn't handle tempo. That's not our style, but we can do it. We got to mix that in somewhat where they just can't get in their rhythm. Nick sets up his defense based on who you got in the game, down and distance, all that. If we can get some easy plays on where they miss a line or miss tackles, that's going to help us too, because I've never seen a team shut down the wide receivers like Alabama did, but the tight ends and running backs got about 400 yards on them. It was unbelievable. Surtain, he shut down that receiver cold, but they weren't able to do any. Their linebackers don't tackle that great in space. They don't cover that good in space. Although Moses is a good player, but he's more of a guy in a closet there, and we got to get him one-on-one. And the last thing I would say is, I'm on the James Cook train. I've been on it for 2.5 years. Hopefully he's going to be well. We saw what he could do the first part of the Auburn game. He's got the vision, the speed, the quickness that you saw from Ole Miss's back the other night. We need him to step up and be ready to go Saturday.
That brings up James Cook. I was on the same train. I know you've been talking about James Cook since he was a recruit.
Yeah.
You also talked about Najee Harris a good bit. So
yeah, what people don't realize, I think, about Najee is that Najee is as big now as he was in high school.
Yeah.
I mean, like he's obviously trimmed. He's fleshed it out a little bit, but he was about the same size, and so he was doing the same things against high school kids.
I also like when we had a rivals camp and we had all these great coaches there who were who do this camp every year. They're professionals. They've coached at the high school, collegiate, NFL level. And after the camp's over, they're getting autographs from Najee Harris. Just to give you an idea how good he is. We've seen this. Well, they weren't our coach, but there were people who were involved in the camp. Point being,
everybody knew
knew what's coming, and we're going to see that firsthand. Now, I want to go to Dane because Dane has actually done some impressive work with his charting stuff. Now, he and I'm losing my Brent Rollins do a great job with the Film Don't Lie series. I was thinking Film Don't Lie and got Brent's name. So they do a lot of they dig into the film, they put it all together, they put it on the website for you to see, and they show things that may not have happened or that you may not have noticed. And I know every time after I watch it, I feel like I know a lot more about what happened in the game that I just watched. I feel like, I didn't see that, I didn't catch that. They do a great job, and I think he's got a spreadsheet, but I don't want to bypass this idea, the giant stakes. Giant stakes for the football team. Holy, that's fantastic.
They put away at least a whole side of beef.
Can you imagine what Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter did?
Yeah, I mean, they probably just turned them loose in the indoor facility with a cow.
Ben Cleveland? Ben, run that down. We're gonna fire.
You gonna let me kill it too?
Speaking of good food, we're at Classic City Eats. Been joined here. Dude, don't get into my food. Been joined here by Jake. We have the Moho barbecue out today. This is killer.
Love it.
It's one of the great things when they changed over to Classic City Eats. They were able to bring out the Moho barbecue. It's one of the best things out there. And if you get a chance when you're in town this weekend, swing by, or anytime this week, swing by our friends here at Classic City Eats, grab the Moho barbecue. It's fantastic. We had that when we had our holiday party. He brought out a big tray of it, and you've never seen the ravenous wolves at UGASports just tear into it. It probably looked like that parking lot the other day after practice. Also, today's Tuesday, and I noticed our friends at Europi have started a new program where you get double points if you use their app on Tuesdays. So today is Tuesday. Get out the Europi app, put in your order, and get double points. Those points add up incredibly quickly. And it's not like, well, I put in 47 offers and I get a free breadstick. Now, these things, use it a couple times and you'll start seeing the free stuff come your way. They're big on giving away free pizzas, free breadsticks. And they have a new menu item that I think you'll like, Jake. New sweet heat pepper pasta. I know you're a sweet heat guy.
Yeah. Okay.
Pepper pasta.
I'm with it.
It's penne tossed with marinara sauce, pepperoni, peppadew peppers, house pickled jalapenos, feta, mozzarella, fresh basil, drizzled with Mike's hot honey.
And the kitchen sink, man. I love that.
I just say if I can show you the picture of it, it looks phenomenal. This is a great pepper pasta. So you get that penny, because you can always get the penny pasta tossed with anything you want, but this sweet heat pepper pasta sounds fantastic. And you can order it now, and on a Tuesday, you get to double the points.
Sounds like dinner's taken care of tonight.
Well, we missed though yesterday the Tennessee bourbon.
I did
burger.
not miss that.
Did you go get it?
I didn't, but I saw the picture.
Yes.
I'm saying.
Our friends at Academia Brewing Company, while we're talking about food, I'll mention them. They actually, over the weekend, had a Tennessee bourbon burger. It was a huge burger topped with pork, bacon, Tennessee bourbon barbecue sauce, and a pepper jack cheese. Huge burger, fantastic bun on it. Go ahead and if you're on Facebook, you're watching us on Facebook, go over to the Academia Brewing Company page, like that page, subscribe to that page, befriend that page, mark it so that their items come up first because they're always doing something new. There's always a new beer. There's always a new menu item from our friends at Academia Brewing Company. Hit them up. It's a great idea. All right, Dane, give me your breakdown on how to beat Alabama.
The secret formula,
the secret
right?
formula that you've been over there with your spreadsheets on how to beat Alabama.
I know you've been spamming Kirby Smart's inbox with this. So
I'm not so sure how secret it is when I'm just doing some box score averages, but I did go back and look at Alabama's last 4 losses. So that's in the last 3 seasons: LSU and Auburn in the regular season last year, Clemson in the national championship game in 2018, Auburn in 2017. And the stats that kind of stuck out is the average yards gained by Alabama's opponents in those games is 450. So Georgia's going to have to move the football. The average yards that Alabama has allowed in those games is also 453 to be exact. So Bama's defense has been susceptible for a few years. The other 2 things I noticed there, third down percentage for the offense that beats Alabama, 52%. Georgia's got to move the chains. And then the other thing, average amount of penalties, 4. Georgia must reduce penalties and to keep drives alive. And that's something that hasn't happened yet. I also wanted to look at quarterbacks that have beaten Alabama those same games: Joe Burrow, Bo Nix, Trevor Lawrence, Jarrett Stidham. And the stat line for that quarterback, they average 21 of 32, 288 yards, averaging just shy of 2 touchdowns in those games, 0 interceptions from all of them. There were no interceptions in those games against Alabama. The quarterback also ran 9 times for nearly 50 yards. So my question is, can Stetson Bennett pass for 50 more yards or so than he has been so far, rush for 50 yards or so than he has so far, and not have any turnovers? Because to me, that's the formula that's worked. The quarterback has to be able to move some.
Yeah, now, when you're reading that off, and it's different because it is Alabama, but to me, that almost sounds like a Stetson Bennett line on a game so far. I mean, what he's been asked to do, around those numbers, I think. He's been efficient with the football. He's not turning it over. Probably 2 touchdowns a game. You can probably pencil him in for that, I think. Yeah. Alabama's a different animal, and Patrick Surtain is a different animal. I mean, the fact of the matter is that's probably going to be, in my mind, maybe the best defensive player Georgia plays all year, regardless of any playoffs or whatever happens past this. That kid is a bona fide first-round pick, probably a top 10 guy. I mean, there's there's just no question about it. That's got to be where the concern lies. And it's going to be frustrating, I think, for George Pickens, probably once again, because I assume that he's going to just be swarmed, by Surtain most of the day. Now, do you give him a chance to get a 50-50 ball at some point? I don't know. It's dangerous to throw that guy's way at any time. But I do think that Stetson Bennett has been able to put numbers together like that. Has he been able to do it against a defense like Alabama, though?
Yeah, Coach, the stuff that Dane was just bringing out is stuff that you had pretty much just said about the third down conversion rates you got to get, the turnovers, no interceptions in any of those losses, quarterbacks who can tuck and run, pick up some yards. I think that Stetson's been close to that line. I don't think he's completed quite that many passes on average. He's been just under, but then Georgia's had a pretty good running game. But Coach, how do you see that working out?
I like the quarterback matchup in this game. I really got a lot of respect for Mac Jones, but any way you look at it, with the offensive line he's got a line like we had last year. A lot of guys that have tremendous experience and have been playing together. Our line's a work in progress there, and he's got 3 big time receivers. We've got 2. Hopefully, some others will surface. I think we got an edge at tight end with McKitty in there over that Forrestall or whatever his name. I think he's a good player, but McKitty to me really gives us a lot of different things we can do that we haven't shown, whether it be line him up on the backside of trips and split him out. We got a lot of stuff we haven't shown for sure. I know that Coach Munkin has a tremendous amount of in his game plan that he could utilize, but it doesn't make any difference if we're not able to run the ball more effectively than we did against Tennessee early. I mean, we just got to run the ball better than what we got out of White, like 17, 18 carries for 50 some yards. We just didn't. They ganged up on the run, but and everybody said, "Well, hey, Alabama's defense is not that great." Well, it certainly wasn't good at all against Ole Miss, but they were running the hurry up and all that, and it didn't look that great against Missouri in the second half. And in the first half against A&M just really torched them throwing the ball. So I think we certainly have an edge personnel-wise on our defense over their defensive personnel, just based on the 11 we put out there. But they probably have an edge on us because of their O-line. Don't you guys agree? I mean, they just have looks like it at running back the way Najee's playing. But I would say our quarterback can stack right up with him. I like the way he throws the ball over the middle. We haven't thrown it to the outside a lot, but he can. I've seen him do it in practice. And one of the things that Bill Walsh used to say, that he used to get that epithet or whatever you call it, that's what you put on your grave if you're a passing team. You've got to hit the outside receivers outside. Otherwise, nobody's going to play them. So you've got to throw the ball to the outside guys. And I'm sure Alabama's going to make sure that they force us to do that. And we got guys that can catch it outside. So whether it's a layered route or whatever it might be, but don't want to get too technical, but
we like technical.
The thing that you want to make sure of in a big game is that your offense understand what your defense is going through in this game. Your defense, even though it's the best defense supposedly in America, and still early, I think it's right up there, is going to have a hard time keeping this team off the scoreboard like they've been doing now. So one thing I would always do in a game like that, when we were just relying on our defense, say offense, hey, it's not going to be hunky-dory out there. You can't miss your turn every time and turn the ball over. You're going to have to score some points. And defense needs to understand that they can't give up anything easy, which is hard to do against Waddle and Devontae Smith and all that, but make them earn it. I don't think we'll get up in their face and press them every down. I think we'll mix it up back and forth. Our pressures will be good, but our pressures are going to be a lot better on 2nd and 8, 2nd and 9 than they are on 2nd and 3. I know we used to have a secondary coach that he used to get mad and said, "Where's the pass rush?" And I said, "Hey, it's 2nd and 3, man. You know, 2nd and 3." So, so that's about the way I feel about getting your team ready here.
Coach, we've talked a lot about Georgia's need, I guess, to kind of come out to a strong start as opposed to what we've seen in some of those other games so far. How much of an advantage do you think Georgia can take by having Jordan Battle out, the starting safety, out for the first half of this game? I mean, that's a key guy in that secondary. And as you mentioned, the secondary's gotten picked on a little bit already.
Yeah, it's definitely the cohesiveness of your secondary not only hurts with your starting group, but it also hurts because now when you go to nickel and dime, you're adding one more player that hadn't played. You see what I'm saying? So you got a regular player in your regular rotation. And then when you go and add another defensive back, you're down to your second or third guy. So it's different, but they've got a lot of good players just like we do. We saw what happened when Richard LeCount went out. Chris Smith came in, and you just got to answer the bell and step up. But I would look for us to attack that area of the field, regardless if they think we're going down the middle or not. I think we got McKitty, and we've certainly seen what Jackson can do. And we haven't seen a lot with Robertson, but he's good over the middle too. I think which team defends the short A, B, C, D zones? Those are, if you just take A is the outside flat on the one side, D is the outside flat on the other, and B and C is in the middle. who's going to defend those crossing routes? Are you going to mirror the guy, or are you going to set up and try to blanket him? But the crossing routes for both teams are going to be pivotal. How are you going to stop them? And then the EFG, the deep, 3 deep, where are we going to hit those zones? Over the middle F zone is really something that's there for us, I think, against this team. They like to play a lot of 2 high safeties, and we can attack that.
And Jake, you had mentioned Patrick Surtain. The matchup of George Pickens versus Patrick Surtain, NFL scouts are going to just savor watching that for the entirety of that game. And so far, I think what we've seen is teams really do some bracket defense or even straight up double team on George Pickens. If Patrick Surtain can have it where Alabama is not having to double team George, if he is that confident, it really just changes how people play against George's offense.
No, I was
One other point I would make on that is Coach Saban is notorious for liking to play 5 under man 2 deep. By that, everybody talks about 2 high safeties where you play double zone on the outside and your linebackers. They like to play man to man and back it up with 2 safeties. If that happens, I can see our quarterback having an inordinate amount of running yardage because they're not that great at rushing the passer. And if he breaks the line of scrimmage, then you can run for days on them. You saw Burrow last year in the first half of that game when they scored 37 points on them, just kill them with the quarterback runs. He did the same thing to us too. So I would like for them to play us 2 deep man under. That would help us. That'll hurt us in the passing game a little bit, but it would certainly open up a lot of quarterback runs.
It wouldn't hurt to have James Cook out there too.
Yeah,
like that. It was funny. Dane brought up the exact matchup I was going to bring up was the Pickens versus Surtain, and how that you won't see that. Maybe they're not doubling up. You don't see that bracket coverage that allowed Kyrus Jackson to just burst onto the scene against Auburn and do well against Tennessee. He's been Georgia's leading receiver right now because everyone's got their eyes on Pickens, and Jackson's been the recipient of some great balls there. I think the other big matchup that's going to have all the NFL scouts salivating would be Azeez Ojulari, just won the Burndick Award. And I'm not sure, that was Monty Rice who won that.
But, it was, yes.
Yeah,
he was defensive
line player of the week for the SEC. And Alex Leatherwood. And again, talking about a kid who was a monster just in camp. I remember being down in Orlando watching Alex Leatherwood and Isaiah Wilson, in that Under Armour game. And Leatherwood he scared people. I mean, he's a high school senior. People are terrified.
Yeah, I went to go see him at Booker T. Washington in Pensacola, and he is one of the most terrifying people I've ever stood next to.
Yeah,
I would have just had to have gone into the fetal position if he'd begun pummeling me.
No, it just there. If he looks at your way, you guys. So I think that's going to be a big one. Coach and Dane, you both give me your thoughts on how we see. Georgia's had some very good pass rushers, but Alabama's got a pretty damn good line. How do you see that matchup working out? Can Georgia get to Mac Jones?
I think we can if the down and distance dictates it. Like I said in the opening, though, if they're making a lot of yards on first and second down, we won't get as much pressure on him because we got to really be concerned about stopping the run. So most of our pressures this year, I think we had 19 out of 40 passing attempts last week where we actually put some kind of pressure on the quarterback with some kind of exotic rush, you know what I mean? Something different than just a pure basic rush where we brought more than 4 guys. So I think that's what I heard Brent Rollins say if he said it, I believe it. So the thing that's good about our rush is we're better with the 4-man rush than we used to be, and it's going to be important. But what's really been good for us is when we put in that Jaguar type group where we put Anderson in there on 3rd down or 2nd long, and we also got Quay Walker comes in there and plays it inside, and Monty Rice might come out, and we play all these Stevenson comes in for somebody on the front, and we just got a bunch of pass rushers in there. We'll get to him and hurry him anyhow. Whether we'll be able to put him on the ground, I don't know, but he's not a real elusive guy, but he's effective back there. But you got to realize the guy's hitting over 85% of his passes. Now you can't do that in a parking lot out there at Target. I mean, the guy's hitting 85%, maybe even more than that on the year, and over 400 yards and like 12 touchdowns. I mean, he's averaging over that a game, and he's had 12 touchdown passes. So, but Ole Miss's defense, that's the other thing I would like to say. I got a lot of respect for Lane Kiffin as a coach and the job he's doing. But the thing you got to do when you take over a job, if you're going to take over a job like that and you're going to take the credit for that great offense, you also got to take the blame for that horse manure defense you got, because you're the head coach, and it's not just you. Hey, well, I got to get our defense going better. Hey, that's your job too. So let's be careful about not giving Matt Luke enough credit for the team he left them, because I guarantee you they went up and down the field on the national champion last year. Against LSU, they scored 37 points. They had over 600 yards. They did the same thing to LSU that Alabama had happened to them with Ole Miss. So certainly they deserve a lot of credit for what they're doing, but their defense isn't even as good as it was last year. I mean, their defense is on a par of being the worst in the history of college football right now if they continue to give up the yards that they have like the first 3 games.
Roddy, you'd mentioned Alex Leatherwood on Alabama's offensive line. Georgia fans need to know Evan Neal, 6'7", 360. And that is a space eater and a guy that can withstand some of Georgia's defensive line attack. But I do want to point out, what is the last team that Alabama played that had an elite defensive line? It was Auburn in the Iron Bowl. Mac Jones threw 2 pick sixes in that game. And that's in large part why Auburn won, because it's not like Auburn's defense was just outstanding, Auburn's offense was just outstanding in that game. Georgia's defensive line is versatile. I'm seeing Trayvon Walker cover receivers out in the flat. I'm seeing Trayvon Walker be a quarterback spy to allow Tyreek Stevenson to be able to blitz the passer behind Monty Rice. You're seeing corner blitzes from Tyson Campbell. You're seeing some aggressive calls that Georgia was not doing quite as much early in the season last year. And more, Georgia's willing to throw some unique disguised blitzes. The quicker they can get there and make Mac Jones uncomfortable, the more likely you're going to get tip passes or fumbles or things that if he can stand back there and just toss it to Jalen Waddle all day, then Waddle's going to have 400 yards, because that's their game. So you got to disrupt that.
So landmines.
Yeah, pretty much.
The problem you got though.
No, go ahead, Coach.
Is they are so good at misdirection, bringing these guys in motion, throwing the screens behind the line, the bubble screens, the slow screens, the Najee, the underneath routes where they'll run a screen where they'll bring a guy all the way across the field and then throw it to him on a screen, kind of like what Oklahoma did to us in the Rose Bowl. They just have a lot of good things to slow down your rush that make it hard to just say, hey, why don't we rush the passer because this guy can't move around. Hey, he'll suck you into thinking you're in there, and then they'll just dump that ball off on the under screen so whatever you got, they got to answer to. And I think we got the same thing with our offense. Whatever they want to do, we got an answer to too, because this matchup with our offense versus their defense is the best it's been in the last 3 games we've had, even though we had an unbelievable offense both years from and those guys, but their defense isn't anywhere near what it was the 2 years we played them in a championship game. I don't think. Do you, Jake or Dane or Roddy?
I mean, that was the knock, when you played them in the SEC championship game. You go back, I think that Jarvis Jones and those guys out there, them just running it down Georgia's throat. They went right at the best player, and it's like you just couldn't stop them. You're going toe to toe with them. And then you get a big lead on them.
I'm talking about 2 years ago when we played.
I know. I'm just saying it just feels like every time you faced them, you had either a great offense or a good. You never were as balanced as you are now. That's my point.
They don't have Quinn and Williams either.
Very true. Very true. Before we get any of the questions that come in,
I wanted to ask Jake, Mr. Recruiter, one thing here.
Okay. All right, go for it.
How many guys on our team on offense could start for their team? And how many guys on our team could Alabama start on our defense?
That's a tough question. I mean, I think that
I don't want a tough question. I want to answer, man. That's why you're the guru. That's why you're the man.
I think offensively, if you're comparing the two, I think that there are three guys that I'd circle on Georgia's offensive side of the ball that would start for Alabama, or at least play significantly. That's George Pickens, clearly. I think Trey McKitty, as Coach said, maybe give him the edge over Miller Forrestall. And then probably Trey Hill, assuming he's having a good day snapping the ball. He's been fantastic outside of that. On the flip side, defensively, I mean, who are you plugging in for Alabama that Georgia doesn't have? Dylan Moses, Patrick Surtain.
Yeah, those two. That's it.
Maybe LeBron Ray is a push for somebody on your offensive line, but talk about a stalemate between those two. I mean, you've got. I mean, that's there's so much talent on each side of that ball for both teams, and I think that's really a telling stat is who could slot in where.
But how many guys had offers from both schools?
All of them.
That's my point. So, I mean, when Georgia's going head-to-head with Alabama for Jamari Sawyer, Trey Hill, Kearis Jackson, you just go down the line. It's Ben Cleveland, every one of them.
Sure, no doubt about it.
That's a good answer. That's a good answer.
Now,
what's the real answer, Coach?
Speaking of recruiting, I do want to touch on some of that here in just a second, but I'm going to throw it to you first. Right?
No, I want to see, Coach, do you have an answer for that? Because you never ask us a question you don't know the answer to. You're like,
I thought he did a good job, but I mean, it's just both teams got relative strengths that are a little bit more experience, a little bit more guys that have been successful. So I think their line's a lot like our line was last year. Our secondary is a lot like their secondary was last year. Our linebackers, I mean, it's a real both teams are very talented, that's for sure, and very well coached, extremely well coached. I don't think their defense is that they're telling their defense to make those mental mistakes, but they've had the kind of a history here in the last couple of years. And you listen to Dane talk about the teams that beat them. All of them scored over 30 points in those 4 games, although they got 2 turnovers for touchdowns against Auburn. But man, you just don't see a Nick Saban defense give up that kind of yardage or that many points. It's just hard to believe.
Well, that's kind of my point, Coach, is just having covered and been on the sideline for all these, Georgia, Alabama games. I mean, I was there in 2007. I started doing this in 1993. Every time they played, I've been there. And it's always felt that Alabama's got the best defense, and Georgia with its great quarterbacks, be it a Jake Fromm or a Murray or, whoever, great wide receivers, can't get it done against that great defense. And that kind of gives me that mindset defense wins championships. Now it feels weird to be going into this game thinking that Georgia has a better defense and Alabama's got the number 1 offense in the nation.
It's topsy-turvy almost.
That's what I'm saying. So that's why I'm like, I just remember when I thought Georgia had its best chance when they had that Jarvis Jones defense. I'm like, okay, now we can go toe-to-toe. No, it boggled my mind because I'm like, they just went at your best players and ran them over. You had Kwame Gathers and
imagine going back
John Jenkins in the middle.
Imagine going back to that and me telling you very soon, Alabama will be the number 1 offense in America. You would have been like, "That's That's crazy."
The most conservative coach in the country going up against the second most conservative coach in the country. This doesn't make any sense. I know we have some questions, and we'll get Dane to answer some of those. But before we get that far, I do want to give a big shout out to our friends at Aaron Overhead Doors. I know that Ryan Lucia was on cloud 9 this past Saturday watching Georgia dismantle Tennessee. And then I thought about it. I'm like, wait a minute, his service area is probably going to grow into Tennessee. So he can't say anything on his public Facebook pages or anything in their literature, but he's a giant Georgia fan. He gives 10% off to any Georgia fan who needs their garage door installed, repaired, adjusted. He designs one for you. I mean, just for being a Georgia fan. And you don't even have to prove it. Just let him know that, hey, I'm a Georgia fan. So you can be a Clemson fan and lie. That's between you and God. It's okay. You just, But
you like saving money,
but you'll get 10% off of your thing. And I talk about their growing service area. Now they cover pretty much all of Gwinnett, all of Cobb, all of DeKalb, all of Barrow, Habersham, Stevens County, Jackson County, North Fulton, Dawson, Hall County, Walton, White, Clark, Cherokee, Oconee, Forsyth. So if you were in, I guess, north of Macon and south of DC, they pretty much got you covered. So it's a huge service area. And again, this isn't a guy who grew up in the garage door business going, yeah, I want to do garage doors. This is a company that's founded on customer service. It's customer service first. They could be repairing car bumpers or street lights or, floors, but no, they do garage doors, and that is they do residential and commercial. So hit them up. And speaking of great service, I want to give a huge shout out to our friends at Masada Leather. I know that you wear Birkenstocks and those types of shoes all the time.
I don't know what you're trying to imply about me by saying that. I mean, it's true. But.
Our friends at Masada Leather and Gifts, Irvin over there has been in Athens since 1975. You can find them at their new location in 5 Points. It's between Earth Fair and Royal Peasant. I know you've been to Royal Peasant many, many a time. So you walk by his new spot. They have Birkenstocks, custom sandals, great sandals over there. They have belts, bags. We're in October. Won't be long before the Christmas is coming up. All the holidays will be here. Get some of the handcrafted, homemade, designed items over at Masada Leather and Gifts. Lifetime warranty on all their stuff. So check them out. All right, hit us up with some questions, Jay.
Well, first, before we dive into that, I do want to touch on recruiting real quick because big week this week, big day tomorrow, in fact. Yeah, right. We'll be on the scene down in Cochran, Georgia. The commitment of the number 2 player in all of America going down tomorrow, 3:30 p.m. That's Marius Mims.
You're going to cover him committing to Tennessee?
Yeah, I'll be there. I think that no, it's going to be it's exciting. I've been consistent in my stance that it's going to be Georgia
for a year
throughout. Yeah, I still feel good about that going into tomorrow, barring any huge surprises. And as Georgia, I think, has shown kind of time and time again, impossible to underrate a pickup like this. If he does end up going with the Bulldogs tomorrow, a kid who just has it. I mean, he's got everything it takes to be a great offensive lineman in this league and in the NFL. I mean, he's everything you look for: the size, the ability, the power, great feet. A kid who I think also too is really just starting to scratch the surface of what he can be and what he can do. Because he's not in one of the higher classifications in Georgia. It's not like he's going against the 7A schools every week, but he'd be fine if he was. But I think that there's more upside for this kid in addition to what he's already bringing to the table. So make sure you're tuned in. We'll be live streaming that one tomorrow.
Can you imagine a offensive line of Roderick Jones, Marius Mims, Tate Radlich, Clay Webb?
Name anybody for the last 4 classes.
Chad Lindbergh, Austin Lasky, just any of those.
Georgia.
So this year's kind of a
Kirby delivered on it.
Yeah,
I mean, he made that part of his opening thing.
Let's go back to what did Coach just say about Ole Miss? You can't just claim the offense; you got to claim the defense too. Kirby's a defensive guy. He's got the number 1 defense in the nation, but he also wants to have a strong offense. So we will see tomorrow. I know a lot of people were talking about how Tennessee was making a huge push for Marius Mims. I think it's down to Tennessee and Georgia. You picked Georgia, and all I do is in my forecast is mimic what you and Trent tell me, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm picking them to Georgia too because they told me to. That's how it works.
Coach, I know you've got a chance to watch a little bit of Marius's film. I mean, he's been on everybody's radar for so long now. What do you see from that guy just being an offensive coach and having evaluated guys like that in the past?
You just can't miss player. I mean, you just got
okay. He's done. Cut Coach off. I mean, you can't add to that.
That's really all there is to be said. True.
And you can't miss him if you're a Georgia Bulldog. You got to have him. You can't lose a guy like that in your state. I mean, and we made sure we didn't lose him.
I agree. I think that a lot of credit deserved to Matt Luke for not only closing in the last class, but putting together a very solid crew again this year. Fairchild's an exciting guy. I think that he's got a lot of upside. Obviously, if you're able to land Marius, that's probably the icing on the cake for offensive line this year. So he'll be able to take some.
Don't anybody. I just want to remind you. I tell you once in a while. Don't anybody put your head on the pillow tonight and forget about number 77 for Georgia, Willock. that guy is going to be a monster.
I agree.
I'm hearing good things. He's back on the field. I knew he was kind of dinged up there for a bit, but I've been hearing about some of the players having to go against him on the scout team, and they're not liking it.
Yeah, it's like Stetson Bennett, except gigantic.
Yeah, they do not like that. And actually, there's a good story about Stetson Bennett on the front page of UGASports.com right now, where you have guys like Jamari Sawyer talking about how they look up to Stetson Bennett, and that's figurative.
Yeah.
But again, he has talking about somebody who's won over the team, and I love the idea that Coach talking about, with that five man under defense, and two high safeties of Georgia running the quarterback. Well, hey, what if you bring in bring in a DeJuan Mathis to run? We know Stetson can fly. He's got great speed, but
I'm glad you said that. That segues well into one of our questions today, and we do have a couple that I definitely want to touch on before we wrap things up here. This one I thought was important, and one I've seen a lot of people ask. This one for you, Coach. Hunter over on the chat at YouTube says, how fatigued can a defense be from a previous week's performance? Ole Miss ran a ton of plays. Is that any advantage to Georgia?
I think to a certain extent it is, because they played it, 4 hours later than us, and they had to come back on how they came back. Was it 200 some miles? They probably flew back to Tuscaloosa, but I mean, we were already in bed and they were still playing. So you got an advantage there a little bit, but plus we play a lot more players than they do. They used to run more guys in, but we've got a little bit more depth, and they don't play as many players as we do. So, but it won't make any difference if we don't make a lot of first downs. So if we do that, it could take a little toll. And as we mentioned, playing without Battle in the first half is going to hurt them a little bit too.
Yeah, the best way to, I guess, if they are tired, the best way to keep them tired is to keep them out there.
Yeah.
Merrick Egan with a good one here for you and I, Roddy. We don't get too many, so I figured I'd take this one. He says, "Woo! I heard you and Roddy say a number of times that in 2015, I believe it was, when Bama came to Athens, you had a terrible feeling that they were about to get steamrolled, just based on eye test of both teams on the field. I remember that really well." He says, "How even is it now, 5 years later?"
Night and day.
I agree. I mean, it's as close to even as you're probably going to get.
We've had two situations like that. Kirby Smart's first year, we went to Ole Miss together.
Yeah.
We walked out on the field, and
the wide receivers,
I thought was their tight end group. Honest to God, I looked at them. I'm like, man, they got some major tight ends, And you look at me, and go, dude, that's the wide receiver core, and I'm like, oh shit, this is going to be a long day. Excuse my language, but that was my exact words. Yeah. And sure enough, it was 31-0 at the half. Georgia got blown out and couldn't put it back together. And then, we've seen this where when Alabama was warming up, it looked like you're about to play an NFL team. And fair, 50-60% of those guys went to the NFL. Not that high, but a lot of them did, And Georgia didn't have them. I mean, when Kirby Smart came to Georgia, he's like
well, that was Rick's last year, I believe. It was in the rain.
Right.
And I just remember them warming up on opposite sides of the field, and it was like watching the high school varsity versus the middle school team in terms of the size difference between the guys.
Kirby Smart said in his first thing, he's like, we got to get bigger.
Yeah.
I mean, he had just coached that Alabama team, and he looked at Georgia. He's like, when he's meeting offensive linemen, he thinks they're fullbacks. That's just there's a problem there. So, but now when you have your Willocks and your Tate Ratledges and you still have a couple, you have some smaller offensive linemen. Your left tackle is not exactly a giant, but Ben Cleveland, that's a big old boy.
Hey, Isaiah Wilson wasn't a giant either. He made it work for him.
No, I'm just saying, but at least your wide receivers. Look at Kyrus Jackson.
Oh,
this is your small guy.
Yeah.
Kyrus has height, So I'm just saying they're from the visual standpoint, it looks like two even teams now. And we saw that Georgia looked as big as LSU last year, even though it didn't work out that way. It's been a few years since you just knew that Georgia was outclassed in recruiting, and back to back number one recruiting classes will do that for you.
All right, we got a couple quick hitters. I want to get to Coach Smyrna Georgia Dog over on the Vent at UGA Sports wants to know. He says, why didn't we see any backup quarterback play on Saturday? It seemed like they had things in hand. Why keep Stetson out?
Dane mentioned that.
Who knows? I can't answer that. The guy was good enough to start when the season started. I mean, you got to feel like you put him in there and be confident he can do the job. I don't know what we never have played our second team quarterback meaningful snaps a lot, where they go in and do anything except pretty much hand the ball off. I know the one game when Fields played against that UMass team, we opened it up with him and all, but I'm not sure what the game plan is on that.
The only thing I could come up with, Coach, and tell me if I'm wrong on this, is potentially with a couple of offensive linemen rotating in late in the game, maybe it's helpful for them to get some of those live snap counts with Stetson, since he's the guy, in case they had to be thrust in that action. That's the only theory I came up with, but I'm not a coach, so you can tell me if that's way off base.
Well, I mean, that's really going into the depth there. I mean, if you're that perceptive, but they do the snap counts with the guys all the time out there. So, I mean, we don't really do a lot of different snap counts anyhow. I mean, we got different ones, but, we do a lot of silent counts too. But that could be it. But, once he put him in there after Stetson got his helmet rattled up a little bit, I thought he'd leave him in. But, he didn't ask me, so I'm not going to ask him.
Last one here for you, Coach. We got a lot of questions about this week, and so I'm going to kind of bundle them all up into one question. A lot of people asking about George Pickens. How do you get this guy more involved? What can you do about it? How this question says, what's happened to George Pickens? Why can't you get him the ball? Is it all about double coverage, or are there ways that you can put this guy in a position to make some more plays?
I think we've been laying in the weeds a little bit here with him because we hadn't needed him as much as maybe people thought. But I can see us going to him. I don't care if Surtan's on him or who's on him. He goes against Tyson Campbell. He goes against Stokes. He beats those guys in practice. I mean, they stop him too. But I think we've been laying in the weeds a little bit. I think we got some different formations with him, and we got some things that we can use. I know this. And I'm not saying anything out of hand here. I guarantee you, Alabama's been working on us a long time, and we've been working on Alabama a long time. And they'll have some things we hadn't seen, and we'll show them some stuff they hadn't seen. But I would think Pickens is going to get some balls his way this week, regardless if they got Nick covering him too.
I agree with your take of it being a situation where, you haven't needed him as much. You let him draw the double coverage against some of these teams that know they have to account for it, and allow a guy like Kearis Jackson. I mean, how much momentum is he coming into this game with now? George is going to be ready anytime you throw the ball his way. So why not go ahead and have another guy ready to go?
I agree. Dane, your thoughts there on the teams? You've broken this down and filmed on live about teams having to focus on George Pickens and how that opens up other guys. How do you think George Pickens does in a one-on-one against the best cornerback in the country?
George Pickens is potentially the best receiver in the country. So I think it would be at least a 50% win if that's the case, as long as the ball's thrown in a spot that he can make a play on. I mean, his catch radius is insane. It is a pro-level catch radius, number one potential wide receiver for a pro team in a couple of years. I mean, he's got that kind of potential. Now, a lot of people are more concerned with his maturity or, his focus and all that stuff. Look, I guarantee you one thing. George Pickens is from Hoover, Alabama. You know what he grew up with? Alabama. And so this is a bit of a homecoming for him. If there is any game that George Pickens is going to be focused and ready to go, I bet it's this one.
Focus though, but I mean, you saw him get the penalty on the sideline, squirted water on the kid. Well, then when you showed the clip of filmed on live of Jeremy Pruitt spiking his headset when Stetson Bennett dove for the pylon.
That was a Gronk spike.
Yeah, that headset isn't coming back. But who ran right up to a cornerback and got in his face right by the referee was George Pickens. I mean, he's a walking 15-yard penalty on every play.
Well, I would say
every play.
It's important to have a guy like that.
Don't get me wrong, I love the swagger,
he's
but
got what
he keeps
he's
getting
got
penalized.
what the experts call shit in his neck. Okay, so
sorry, but yeah.
All right. Big matchup this weekend. time for mouthwatering players, as always. Who's your guy that has to step up in order for Georgia to pull this one off? Dane, let's lead off with you, buddy.
It may be the easy pick, but I'm sticking with the guy that we've been talking about. I think it is George Pickens, because I think your best offensive player must shine to beat Alabama. That's the case. That's happened every time that they've been in a game that they've lost in recent years. And even last week, you saw Matt Corral from Ole Miss. He was the best offensive player on the field, and that he shined in that moment. I think George Pickens, either with his stats and his production and catching the ball himself, or what his presence does to Alabama's defense and opens up for other people like we've seen so far this year. I think this is going to be a massive game for George Pickens.
All right, I'm going to take mine so Roddy will have some more time to steal and crib notes. I'm going with Lewis Cine in this game. I thought he delivered a couple of huge hits in the last one. He's kind of just been lurking everywhere. And I think in a game where you've got the deep threats that are like Devontae Smith and Jalen Waddell, you need a guy on the back end back there to play enforcer, let him know that he's coming. He's not going to let a lot of guys get behind him. So I think Lewis Cine has a big game this week. Roddy, who you got?
I'm basically stealing something from Coach Don. He mentioned that, the way Alabama covers defenders and how that allowed Ole Miss to have running backs and tight ends just running free. My thought might be one of the running backs, Kenny Mack. I keep saying Kenny Mack might be the best running back in that room right now. I mean, that could change, but I'm going to go with either Trey McKitty or John Fitzpatrick, and maybe even the Big O. But right now, I'll go with Trey McKitty, because I just think that I don't think that Monken is scared to use the tight end religiously. He's a matchup issue. And let's say Trey McKitty takes advantage of what Alabama's doing, and Georgia keeps feeding him. Again, we haven't seen that in forever, but maybe this is the game.
All right, Coach. Who's got to have a breakout for the Bulldogs to pull one off in T-Town?
I'm going to say the referees. And the reason I'm saying it is because how they call the game here, both secondaries really rely on using a lot of technique with their hands, played everybody up in your face, use good judgment, and call it like you see it. Don't have any phantom calls here. But the team that can cover without getting pass interference or without getting holding calls is going to be the team that wins this game, I really believe, because both teams mirror each other. So referee-wise, please let them play, but let's be ready for a lot of bad calls on that.
Well, you mean like the one that screwed Arkansas against Auburn?
Yeah, that's a tough call, but Arkansas, I mean, I thought they did a terrible job of trying to make a first down there at the end of the game. I mean, if you would say that you're the offensive coordinator and you needed one first down to pull a major upset to get your program going, and you run 3 plays like they ran, then it's hard to look the players in the eye. I think Sam Pittman's doing a tremendous job, Odom, the whole team, but they got a bad call, but they didn't do a very good job of trying to win the game with when the guy missed the field goal there.
I think the other mouthwatering play that we missed was Coach Don bringing the scoop on those steaks in the parking lot.
No question.
Well, you said that was a Cattlemen's Association?
Right.
All right, so we need to give
Shout out to the Cattlemen's Association.
Hey, I'm sponsoring our show.
Yeah, let's get some of those steaks to go down my throat.
We'll work for beef.
Yeah, we can work out a trade deal where, you could
cut y'all all in free subscription.
Yeah, exactly.
But the thing about that's so good is those guys that come up and do the cooking and interact with our players, they get a lot more out of it than the players do. They just love being around the kids, and it's just a real give and take type situation. It's it's kind of like when the guys bring the watermelon up there. It's just a really, these guys are Georgia Bulldogs. I mean, it means a lot to them.
Hey, that's why they're the flagship team of the state. As much as Jeff Collins, I want to hear that. That's the way it is.
I agree.
Tune in next Tuesday at noon. We will have the recap and kind of breakdown of where Georgia stands after the Alabama game. Hopefully, we're celebrating a win. If not,
maybe a new commitment too.
Maybe a new commitment. Maybe this Thursday we will have Around the League with Coach Don and breaking down all the games. Dane's going to join him. Brent's going to join him. They have a great show. If you want to talk about the rest of the SEC, not just Georgia stuff. That's every Thursday at 1 o'clock. Then, of course, we will have the watch along this Saturday. We will be in Coach Donnan's rumpus room and where we have the big projection screen, and we will be talking about the game. Watch that along with the game. You have the game on your big screen TV, but on your phone or your tablet or your laptop or any computer, have the watch along show with us as Coach Donnan breaks down the game. Dane tells everybody some great stats and some great insight, and I drink Bud Light seltzers until I have to cut out for a bathroom break. So tune in to all of our shows, and we will see you next Tuesday. Take care.